I'm gonna do something unheard of in this video. We're gonna upload it earlier in the day than 10 a.m. PST because this is probably the most important topic that we will discuss this year. And it involves so many of these teams that are playing today on Tuesday, April 16th. This is going to be a boring video. We're just gonna go over some information, we're just reading some tweets. But if you are a fan of the Detroit Red Wings, if you're a fan of the Washington Capitals or the Philadelphia Flyers, if you're a fan of the Vegas Golden Knights or the Vancouver Canucks, there is really good reason to pay attention to what's going on right now. Because Frank Seravalli went out there and labeled it out on the line here. Take a look at this. Heading into the final 72 hours of the 23-24 season, these are all still up for grabs. The top seed in the West, either Dallas or Vancouver. The Atlantic Division title, either Boston or Florida. The Pacific Division title, either Vancouver or Edmonton. Third place in the Pacific, either LA or Vegas. And then there are 4 teams vying for the final wild card in the East. Washington, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. Now, if you head over to the NHL standings and you try to sort by who's on top, who's in the conference leading and everything, I mean, the Western Conference race is pretty much decided. If the Dallas Stars lose their final game in regulation and the Vancouver Canucks win their final 2 games, they have a chance of overtaking Dallas for a top spot in the West via regulation win tiebreaker. But I don't necessarily know if this is the biggest thing that Canucks fans in particular are paying attention to. I think most Canucks fans are paying attention to what's going on in the 6, 7, 8 range, but we'll get to that later in the video. Earlier in today's show, though, we did talk a lot about the Detroit Red Wings and their race in the wild card standings, because as it stands right now, the New York Islanders have solidified themselves a spot for 3rd place in the Metro. There is no reality where the Islanders drop out and they're not able to play off against the Carolina Hurricanes because the Washington Capitals, they can't catch up. Neither can the Philadelphia Flyers nor the Pittsburgh Penguins, so the Islanders are locked right in there. Meanwhile, for that final wildcard spot, 81 games apiece for the Flyers, the Penguins, the Wings, and the Capitals, all split by 1 or 2 points max. And as we had talked about, these games here today are going to be so important. Philadelphia, Washington, and Detroit all playing off against each other. If you wanted to go over to some of the odds, Dom Lucician went out there and tweeted this out, that as of yesterday night, Detroit had a 46% chance of making the playoffs, Washington a 42% chance, Pittsburgh a 10% chance, and Philadelphia a 3% chance. Philadelphia has the lowest odds here because they can't just win and get in. They need to rely on the teams ahead of them to blow the remaining games so that Philadelphia can squeak into the final wildcard. But if you wanted to see the intricate breakdown as to how all of these games are going to affect the standings, Frank Seravalli's got your back. Here is an entire tweet going over the scenarios for the final Eastern playoff spot with all 4 remaining teams at 81 games played. The Capitals will make that final wildcard with any win versus Philadelphia, or if they get themselves 1 point against Philly, and the Red Wings lose versus Montreal, and that 1 point against Philadelphia, they also need to get any Penguins loss against the New York Islanders, because even though the Penguins are not playing today on Tuesday, they do play on Wednesday against the Isles, so that will be their final game of the season. That is also super important as well. If the Caps want to make it, they need to make sure that Pittsburgh loses against the Island. Now, going back over to the tweet here, the Red Wings can get that final spot in the wildcard with any win versus Montreal, and the Capitals earn 1 or fewer points against the Philadelphia Flyers. The Red Wings could also get themselves that spot if they get a point versus Montreal, and the Capitals get a regulation loss, and the Penguins get 1 point or less in the Islander game. If the Red Wings end up losing in regulation against Montreal, it is a guaranteed elimination. Let's go Penguins. This is what they need to do in order to make the wild card. They need a win against the Islanders, and they need the Capitals and the Wings to both earn 1 or fewer point. Either that, or the Penguins need 1 point against New York, and have the Caps and Red Wings both lose in regulation. For the Pens, if they lose in regulation, they're out. This is because the tiebreaker actually does belong to the Pittsburgh Penguins. If the Penguins tie Detroit and Washington, the Pens do have the most regulation wins. So if you assume that Detroit and Washington lose in regulation today and Pittsburgh loses in overtime tomorrow, then Pittsburgh would overtake both of these teams. So it would be a four-way tie, because if Washington loses to Philadelphia, Philadelphia gets up to 89 points, and if the Penguins get themselves 1 point, they would actually have the tiebreaker over all of these four teams. So pretty substantial right there. The Flyers, in order for them to make the playoffs, they need a regulation win versus the Capitals, and they need the Wings to lose in regulation against Montreal, and they need the Penguins to lose in regulation to the Islanders. So anything but a regulation win for Philly results in elimination. Frank Saravelli also tweeted this out. If the Flyers somehow end up being the team, I'm pretty sure they advance on the sixth tiebreaker between them and the Capitals. This is where the Capitals' goal differential jokes are actually real. And 2, only the Capitals or the Wings can clinch on Tuesday. So if one of these teams, Washington or Detroit, wins in regulation, then that's it. We're decided. We know what's going to happen. There's no more ambiguity. But if you have yourselves these two teams losing in regulation, you still gotta wait until Wednesday to see what happens with the Pittsburgh Penguins, whether or not they would find themselves in that spot, and the Flyers still have their fate intertwined with that Penguins game as well. That's kind of funny though, isn't it? Thinking that the Caps' goal differential jokes will actually manifest a result in the postseason. But hey, as we had talked about at the beginning part of the video, it's not just this Eastern wildcard thing that is really heating up here. It's the Pacific Division as well, and third place. Because if you head over for the Vancouver perspective here, you want to see what's going on in the Pacific. Vancouver is number 1 with 107. Okay, they have a pretty significant lead there. Number 2 is Edmonton. Number 3 is LA. Right now, Nashville and Vegas are pretty much neck and neck, because the Predators have started to lose a few games here and there. They maxed out at 99 points. They completed their season earlier yesterday against the Penguins. The Vegas Golden Knights do have an opportunity to overtake the Nashville Predators with 100 points should they win their final 2 games. If this ends up being the case, then LA would actually drop down to the second wild card. It would make things interesting because the Kings do have an opportunity to tie the Predators as well. So the Vancouver Canucks and their playoff opponent, it's not all too guaranteed. And we did have some extra points going out there talking about this. Elliot Friedman tweeted this out, that Minnesota had a 3-1 win over LA. Nashville is locked into the West 7, likely versus Vancouver, but not yet guaranteed. If Vegas beats Chicago and Anaheim, the Golden Knights would finish third in the Pacific and meet Edmonton, which means that Vancouver would get either Nashville or LA. The Kings also own the tiebreaker versus the Golden Knights. Another tweet goes out there here from JPat, says this: the Predators finish with 99 points. The LA Kings have 97 points with 2 games to go against Minnesota and Chicago. Vegas has 96 points with 2 games to go versus Anaheim and Chicago. So there could realistically be a world, depending on what happens with LA and Vegas as they duke it out for the final third place spot in the Pacific, the right to play Edmonton. There is a world where Nashville drops down to wildcard 2, and one of Vegas or LA is wildcard 1, and the Canucks are underneath Dallas. Therefore, Vancouver would play LA or Vegas in the first round. My goodness, dude, my mind is absolutely exploding thinking about the different possibilities here. PJ went out there and said this, that Nashville has the tiebreaker on both. If Vegas wins times 2 and LA wins times 2, LA is the Pacific third and Vegas is wildcard 1. If Vegas wins twice and LA wins once and shootout losses 1, LA is Pacific 3 and Vegas is wildcard 1. If LA wins twice and Vegas wins 1, shootout 1, then LA is Pacific 3, Vegas is wildcard 2. And if LA wins 1 and Vegas wins 1 in the shootout and 1 loss, LA is Pacific 3 and Vegas is wildcard 2. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Like, hey, we don't know who the Canucks are going to play at this point. We have no idea. LA, Vegas, Nashville, it could be either one of these 3 teams. It's so nuts seeing how crazy this format is. NHL, please just go back to 1-8. 1-8-2-7, 3-6-4-5. Please just go back to that format. This format sucks. Like, as much as I like to see the LA Kings lose out to the Oilers, how many times do we have to see it? Of course, I shouldn't come to conclusions, because that might not even be guaranteed at this point. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, what are your opinions about this wildcard race shaping up between LA, Vegas, and Nashville? If you're a Red Wings fan, what are your thoughts on the Wings battling Montreal for the right to, at least at this point, reserve that wildcard spot? And what are your opinions on the Washington Capitals as well? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Carlsson 99, and bye.